Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special live stream. Ukraine is in our hearts. The war there is devastating. In addition to it being a humanitarian crisis, it's also an emotional crisis. As the largest global emotional intelligence network, we here at 6 Seconds are offering a space for feelings and connection as a springboard for action for the greater community. With people fighting, fleeing, people hosting and helping, protesting, many are reminded of the past experiences and trauma of war. And nearly every one of us now feels that the world is a little more dangerous. In the wave of fear, we can become volatile and reactive, or we can become intentional and compassionate. Tonight, I'm joined by 5 panelists. Each will share their stories and describe their feelings about the current situation. Each person has a unique position to also tell us more about how we can work with our emotions and become an ally for those affected by the current situation. Welcome to everyone on the panel. Before I ask you to introduce yourselves, I'd like to also thank those who are watching at home, whether on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Whether you're watching us now or in the future, please add your comments, enrich this discussion as we come together. You may want to ask a question of our panelists, and please contribute in a way that helps that discussion. So to kick us off, may I ask Paulina to introduce yourself?
Hi, David. So my name is Polina Koltseva, and I'm from Bulgaria, and I really hate introducing myself. I am the CEO of Fantasia International, bringing social emotional learning to Bulgarian children, their parents, and their teachers. This
Wonderful.
is in short for me.
Good. Thank you, Paulina. Gwyneth, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Gwyneth Jones. I'm from Wales, but I live in the Czech Republic, in Prague. And I have a background in peacebuilding NGOs and psychology, but mainly what I do at the moment as an EQ coach and work that We Connect facilitator is help people to navigate their emotions about all the things that are going on in our world at the moment.
Thank you, Gwyneth. We also have Andrea joining us tonight.
Hello, David. Thank you. Greetings to everybody. I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. My name is Andrea. I am coming from the world, as I like to say, right now in Cluj, in Romania, working in peace building, working in innovation ecosystems, being a peace builder, educational specialist or educator, I would say, and a strategist. I'm looking forward for this conversation because probably the strongest reason why I'm here is because of the peace building background. I worked with peace building NGOs, mostly with civil society in dialogue settings, in peace education training, but also I have worked in the region. I worked with Syrian peace builders. I worked in Moldova and the Transnistrian region, and I worked also in Ukraine in a project in Crimea, and later on a multi-education project in different parts of Ukraine.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us tonight. Elena, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I will make it very shortly. I'm Elena Bertnikova. I am from Ukraine. I live in Kyiv. Before, I was training consultant and a coach. And so,
thank you.
Shortly.
Yes, and you're in the Ukraine at the moment, as I understand. So you're right.
Yes, I'm in Kyiv. Yes.
In Kyiv. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We hope that we can stay connected with you in this hour. But if for any reason, of course, you have to leave, we will all understand. And Debbie, would you introduce yourself as well?
Hi, David. Hi, everybody. So I'm Debbie. I live in Greece, born in Chicago of Greek immigrant parents. I have a background in counseling and organizational psychology, and I've been spending my past 26 years in people development using um, m- any EQ skills that I can to transmit the ability to, while I'm learning as well, to navigate and manage and use our feelings in the most productive way through any situation that we might face.
Great. Thank you. And that's really what we want to open this discussion with tonight, is how we can navigate our feelings, how we can use our emotions and understand things a little bit more as a community, and really coming together. And welcome to those I see here sharing their thoughts and feelings, also where they're located. We really are a global community, and it's wonderful to have many voices from many parts. I'm based in Vienna, Austria. And we have others here in Europe, and of course closer to the conflict and the war that's happening at the moment. So it's really great to share in that. And as we've said before, please send in your comments, add and post as we go along to enrich this discussion as a community. And I'd like to first open by asking any and all of you, all of our panelists, but what are you noticing at the moment about your feelings? Or even what are some of the feelings that are coming up for you?
It seems that the number one feeling that rises, or the spontaneous feeling, if I can say, is fear, uncertainty, and maybe even anger to what is going on. At least, those were my first feelings on February 24th when I opened the TV in the morning. I was in Cyprus training and preparing myself for the training, and I just put CNN to hear what's going on in the world. So the first feeling was my stomach sunk, and was fear and anger, I think, were the first two feelings that rose. And speaking around with people, it seems like they're common feelings.
Yeah, so as a coach and psychologist, I imagine you're working with a lot of people who share similar feelings as well, Debbie.
Yeah, it's really interesting, these days, because I continue doing my therapy, my therapeutic work and my coaching work. And the first 10 minutes at least are spent talking about what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in the world in general. And, where is this leading us? And people are having a very hard time focusing on their own feelings right now, which, in their everyday lives, because our everyday lives have become what is going on in Ukraine right now. So we spend at least the first 10 minutes trying to express our feelings about this and how it infects everything else we're doing. So even if something is going on in our lives where right now it might be difficult or scary, you hear people saying, yeah, but in comparison to, and you kind of put it into perspective, and then you change the way you see your life at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything comes into question in that way. What about some of the others? Paulina, I see you nodding there. What are your feelings in this moment, and maybe what you've noticed in others too?
Fear and even panic was my first reaction to the news about the war. And the first 2 days, I actually spent crying. I couldn't accept that this can happen in our time. We are doing so much things to bring emotional intelligence to people, to teach each other, to learn from each other how to communicate in order these things not to happen, to learn from our history where there were wars, and this is happening again. It's a lesson that we've never learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and anger too, Debbie. You said it. I'm angry too. I'm angry that this is happening. I'm devastated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Even just in Austria, I sensed this last week for myself feelings of overwhelm at even the small things. And I'm still, 1,000 kilometers away. Elena, you're there. Please share with us your thoughts. We want to hear from you in this moment as well.
Oh, I'm really nervous right now. Yes. First day, it was absolutely fear. It was panic because when you hear at 5 o'clock that something is bombing, and we understand that it is bombing. It's desperate. It's it's sometimes a depression. But I would say that because we are so connected now, this very strong feeling of connection that keeps you alive sometimes. People will learn to live a new reality, and for instance, we will learn to start to get used to air raid sirens. First days, it was absolutely, you can't even imagine how it works, because stomach somewhere, you are trembling and very, 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 very difficult.
Okay.
But now in 21 days we already get used to it. Strange to say, but it is. But what I say, the most of the feeling I feel, this is the connection with people, with my people, my country.
Yeah. And that you mentioned connection. So is it bringing also people together? I mean, we see a lot of social
Absolutely.
media coming out, really heroic acts of service, acts of true humanity in
Yeah,
that sense.
absolutely. We are like one, like one organism. Like, it's like one united heart. It's which joined 50 million hearts, which are beating in one rhythm.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. I don't know if you feel the connection of the rest of Europe, of us
Yes.
also joining with you, but of course, part of our discussion tonight, some of you live in the countries that are bordering with the Ukraine and are close to, Vienna, Austria is only 2 countries away, but others are closer. And so there are a lot of efforts also now to help refugees coming through. There are people coming to Vienna, for instance, and to other cities all across Europe to support and bring to safety people there. And I've seen some heartwarming scenes myself of connection with people. But Gwyneth, let me ask you, you're in Prague. What are you seeing, but also what are you feeling? Still with our original question about what are you feeling and maybe what you're noticing in others as well.
Yeah, well, when it first happened here in Prague, I know I felt very dysregulated, I can say. I wasn't able to really think clearly or to sleep for a couple of days. And, I think a lot of that was the proximity of it, as well as having Ukrainian friends, having, colleagues and friends many of us have here in Prague. And now what I'm feeling, I think what Elena was saying, it's almost scary how quickly we're able to get used to something being the new reality. So I can actually speak to that numbness that starts to arise in me where I go, oh yeah, well, this is normal now. And that's quite frightening, I think. There's a general uncertainty, but I think because I was already working with the fear and the uncertainty of climate collapse, now this is integrated as just another piece of that story, for me and for the people who come to work with me for us to navigate. It's just another piece of that. But I have to say, the feeling in Prague is very different from when I went back to Wales to visit the other day, because, we're very close here. We've taken in, I think, 100,000 Ukrainian refugees at least. And and of course, I'm also struggling with that anger of noticing that there is a hypocrisy as well going on, right? There is the narrative of, oh, how can this happen now in the 21st century? But it was happening already. It was happening in a lot of countries. And I think maybe Andrea can speak more to that from your peace building work. But, you know, there's a sort of awakening maybe happening with the, you know, Western privileged white bubble of people who've sort of gone, oh, this can happen to us. And it's very uncomfortable to face that, I think, in yourself and to see it. But yeah, I feel there's a sort of painful awakening happening for a lot of people when they go, oh yeah, that, you know, this was already happening. So yeah, like struggling with all of those things, trying to.
You're right, Gwyneth. And in our humanitarian moment here, we're also on the back of COVID, still in the throes of COVID, and how we're also dealing and coming together with that. And as you said, very rightfully, that this has happened in many countries across Europe, across the world, that still happen now. War is unfortunately still with us. Andrea, please share your thoughts now about how not only you're feeling, but maybe in just some of the things you've been noticing in this present situation.
Yeah, you know, it is interesting because first I was thinking that go briefly over my feelings and then expand a bit about what I notice around. But I think I'll do it the other way around because it's becoming more and more complex about my feelings. So I will say a little bit about the feelings, the emotions, past the acts we see around here in Romania. And I think the first thing was solidarity. And it was pretty amazing because it didn't happen before. It didn't happen, for example, when the Syrian refugees were coming, quite on the contrary. So it's amazing. There is a big feeling of solidarity, of mobilization, together with the fear, the anger, and the being worried about what might happen. So this is like the overall population. There is a big anxiety feeling and insecurity, but I think it's really balanced with the solidarity that people just it made them act before the authorities. It made them be at the border there, although actually we didn't have the biggest influx, and many of the Ukrainians are passing through Romania. I think some of the solidarity was making them reassured and making them stay. There are also bittersweet feelings among people because obviously, whether you want it or not, there is a romanticized image, even of a conflict, even of a war. So, you know, faced with the reality, people might not see the same. So it's bittersweet in many ways. People are impressed and are so impressed by the human connection that is made with the women, with the children that they're hosting in the homes, and with perhaps people that before they weren't thinking even as neighbors. I mean, it did bring us together. Also, Elena was saying, you know, definitely brought people together there, but I think also to some extent across the border. Yeah. Now, regarding my feelings, I would say complexity and overwhelming. And that's mostly, I think, because of the working in peace building. Of course, it was, I think the first reaction was disappointment that it, you know, we worked so hard. And for example, in Ukraine is the second time we failed, basically. So that was probably the biggest, and anger and sadness. But then, you know, as a peace builder, you're trained to say, okay, recognize the emotions, recognize them, acknowledge them, but are there also any constructive feelings that we can build upon? And then it's going on and discovering the same, the compassion, the patience, and a sense of control. A sense of being trained as a peace builder, seeing the stories before, using the experience of having plans. So that gave a sense of some sense of control and some sense of empowerment and direction in this context. Yeah, it's quite complex, as I said, and in many ways, isolation is a feeling that at the personal level you get, because there are not many peace builders, and the rhetoric we see is clearly a rhetoric of war. But even that feeling of isolation, I think it's counteracted by this type of encounters. Even if we're 5 people, 6, 10. This, I would come back to the sense of and the feeling of connectivity that Elena was mentioning. And so grateful, Elena, for your being here, for your sharing, for your connected. So gratefulness for that.
Absolutely. And there are at least, right at this moment, 20 people watching. So we are a global connected community. And Andrea, you're welcome into our 6 Seconds community as a peace builder. And I really want to, what you said really aligns with what we do at 6 Seconds. And I've got the model behind, and many are familiar who are watching with our models and things. But the point is, you said rightly to recognize, and you've all recognized, we've all shared, what are we feeling? And many people too here in the chat have also sharing their own disappointment. Resilience came up as a topic just earlier in the chat there. And some really interesting feelings are happening. And what's clear is that there are a mixture. And we always talk about things maybe in waves. It comes and it goes. Maybe the space between the air raid sirens, Elena, is a place for connection and calm. But then, of course, we're thrown back in different directions. And so we have to cope with that. I want to home further. You mentioned constructive. What are the constructive feelings? And this is really in terms of how do we choose where to go from here? How do we work through? How do we navigate our emotions really becomes to the fore here. You mentioned compassion, patience, and control, Andrea, these constructive feelings. Maybe you could kick us off in this moment here, but you are a peace builder. You've been trained in this, as you've said. This is wonderful. Is there something that you do in this in these situations? It's not the first that you've faced, as you've said. So when we say constructive feelings, what comes up for you as something to share in terms of how you look at it, or how you take perspective with your feelings or the situation, that balance you mentioned, the solidarity, as well as then your own feelings. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think from the peace building theory and practice, there is this model of nonviolent communication, and what it does, it's actually first acknowledging the observation, what is happening, then expressing the feelings, and then having an invite. I think this is something that also I tried to apply myself here as an outsider still, because it's something that I think at the moment you cannot ask people on the ground to do that, and that's why I think it's more something that we can apply if we are providing relief, if we're providing any type of work, but it's not something to ask to follow, because it's a different situation. So something that I would say is this observation and trying to focus on
I think we're losing the connection there a little bit, Andrea.
Okay, focusing on the facts, and blaming the facts and not the persons, and then acknowledging the feelings. I wrote here 3 words, and I would perhaps keep it to that so that we can hear also from the others. But pause and anchor and connect. is something that I've done. So first, I tried to pause, to look, to analyze my own feelings, the others' feelings, to see what's happening, to observe, but also in the situation where things were happening. So I assessed, and there was enough humanitarian relief. I didn't have to jump right in there. So I paused. And then, almost simultaneously, I did connect to the people I knew from the ground, and first asking about their safety, and then asking them to do everything they can first to keep safe. It's not a perspective everybody shares, but it's the same perspective that I was asking to my Syrian colleagues, who then became friends some years back. And now I asked also to my friends in Ukraine. I think the lives, the humanity is the most important thing. And I would really like to do everything so that they are safe. And and I let them know that, here they have a home.
Okay, I think it's my connection. Did everyone else hear that? Excellent. I could see the nodding. I certainly could grab there, Andrea. You mentioned pausing, asking people. Really, we can't always address things when we're on the ground. We've got to get into things first, and then go on from there. So, thanks for pointing out. It's my connection, Gwyneth. Vienna's a little unstable with the internet. I did read that the internet in the Ukraine, Elena, is absolutely fantastic right now. A Ukrainian in Amsterdam who's studying was connecting with his family, and had absolutely, he said his family had absolutely fantastic connection, much better than he had in the Netherlands. And there's another picture I saw even just yesterday of people on the ground, a technician repairing the optic fiber cables to make sure that people do have the things that they need, in terms of services and connection, and being able to also talk with the outside world. So thank you then, Andrea, for your...
And if I may say something, just reaffirming the long-term commitment to peace building. It's something that I feel it's stronger now. So going over that disappointment and reaffirming it, and paying attention to that numbness that you guys talked about, because it's something that happens, and it can be both dangerous and this is something that we need to fight. We need to be aware, and we need to keep getting ourselves used to a culture of peace, because we cannot go again in the direction of a culture of war.
No, you're absolutely right. And that sounds like a really great choice. We can recognize the numbness, but we can move towards connection in that sense. And Debbie, I want to ask you, Greece has also faced refugees, crisis, war, and is still, recovering from that and growing and building from that. I had the pleasure of visiting Castellorezzo twice already, a beautiful island, but still half built, because post the situations with wars and takeovers, it hasn't fully been restored as yet. But do you have any thoughts on how we can continue to build peace and grow together in solidarity as a community?
And I would like to add on to what Andrea beautifully just said. I couldn't stop nodding at what she was saying. And I was thinking, as Andrea, as you were talking, I was thinking that actually one of the major feelings that I had at the beginning was helplessness. And I'm going to connect that with the numbness that you were talking about, because I couldn't agree more with the steps that you described. And you were talking, I was thinking, my God, she's speaking right into my heart, because at the beginning you're thinking, this is way above me. I can't do anything here. And then this pause that Andrea said is so important, because it allows you to take a step back and rethink and refeel and assess your position in this situation. And then one of my favorite quotes is that maybe you can't save the world, but maybe you can save the world for one person. So in every situation that is really beyond us in the greater scheme of things, but there's so many, if I can say, little things that create a big picture at the end. So yes, in Greece, first of all, as I said earlier, I am a child of two people that fled their country and went to the United States for a better chance. And I did come back here 26 years ago, and we do have a lot of refugees. And it is true, I think Gwyneth and Paulina, you were saying earlier, it is true that although we have so many Syrians that have come to Greece, and myself and my children have been a great part, I don't know if it's great, but we've been a part of trying to ease their situation as best as we can. And not only Syrians, we have people from all over the world that came here for a better life. And it's true that with Ukraine, it's sad actually that because it's so close to us, all of a sudden, everybody's united. It's sad that it's happening only now. It should be happening everywhere and all the time. And it's sad that only when it comes next to you and you actually feel the heat of that fear do you react more. And when it's far away from you, it's news on your TV.
Yeah.
So in Greece, we have faced the situation of sheltering, helping many people that have run to our country. And we are known as a country to be very hospitable and take people in. However, it's not always that magical, because when you are in a country that suffers from an economic crisis to begin with, and you have a huge percentage of people that are without a job or live on the verge or even within poverty, you do have people that get angry and they say, I want to help, but, and then there's this big but, if I help this person, do I lose my job? Do I lose my situation? So there is a conflict of feelings in my country. Some people are very adamant and they don't want anybody coming in. And some people are, let everybody in and let's help everybody that they can. And then there are the few of us that are saying, I can offer a plate of food and it won't make me any poorer than I already am. And then, so there are a lot of mixed feelings going on. But at the end of the day, we are a country that is helping, and we are a country that is offering our land and are sharing and are giving jobs and are doing the best we can. But it's interesting to recognize all the different feelings that are going on. And it's not always because people are mean people or bad people. Again, it's fear of losing the little that you have already. And I think the feelings, to go back to your initial question, the main feeling that we need to focus on, as difficult as it might be, because it seems to be a very difficult one, is empathy.
Yeah.
And it seems that right now around the world, it's the most difficult competency to fulfill. And if I may, David, just for 1 second, you mentioned earlier COVID, because COVID also brought a lot of these feelings that we're talking about, fear, uncertainty. We had and we have a lot of people dying from it. But I think the main thing there was that the enemy was invisible. And it was common for everybody around the world.
Yeah.
Here, the enemy is visible. It's human. It's not just some kind of bug going around. And that becomes even more disappointing, especially for people like us and many like us who had devoted their lives to emotional intelligence, peace, compassion. It's really disappointing. So I think that we need to help ourselves and help people
Yes.
practice more compassion and empathy,
Mhm.
to be able for a second to think, this is what I do every day.
Mm.
There was a woman from Ukraine that went on TV and said, we are normal people like you. Yesterday, I picked up my children from school. I had a glass of wine with my husband and we watched Netflix.
Mhm.
Today, I'm on the street with my children trying to figure out where I'm going to go. If we can walk a mile in their shoes just for a second, and then
Yeah.
remember to come back and see how we can be part of that solution, even just one little bit, I
Yeah.
think that's what the world needs most right now.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. And I'm interested too. We've got. I want to bring Elena and Polina into the discussion. Elena, you're firstly someone who is an EQ practitioner and part of our EQ network. What are you feeling in terms of what from the development you've had with us at 6 Seconds? What are some useful things that are helping in real terms in Kyiv and can be things that you're passing on to mothers and children who are fleeing or to the men who are staying to fight? Are there any things that are helpful in this moment that maybe more broadly, question came before, how else can we help? Maybe there's certain things that from what we've done in 6 Seconds that are really at the forefront here. Do you have any thoughts?
Okay. But regarding connection, we have really positive news because Elon Musk gave us Starlink. If you probably don't know that we have this Starlink connection for our army. I would like to share the idea of Andrea regarding pause, because it works absolutely. Pause is working, anchoring is working.
Yeah.
We can look at this from different perspectives, because now we have very short-term needs, and they are on the physical level, means to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends and colleagues, they are working as a psychologist, therapist, and they notice they have immense number of requests, they even can't cope. And they say that this noticed the quick burnout of psychologists and volunteers who are working. Simply because the scale is so large of all this, disaster, this war, this happening.
Yeah.
On the middle term perspective, so for this time, we probably need more programs or support in case for preventing burnout of psychology, of those care for carers, those who care.
Helping the helpers, caring the carers.
Yeah. Then, and I think that Andrea knows all these programs perfectly well, that on the middle term, it should be other programs, for instance, educational, supporting parents, supporting children.
Yeah.
And on long term also, it will be different kind of programs. Regarding the emotions, what I noticed now, that, it's like swinging from euphoria to depression. It's ups and downs, us every day, in it several times during the day. It's from anger to empathy. It's it's swinging all the time, and people were telling each other, again, it's like ups and downs, ups and downs.
Yeah.
But we have we have the expression now of, greeting, saying, how are you? But this is not formal, how are you? This is, it means that I love you, we're connected, what to eat, let's have it for today. Do we have medicine? How can I help you? This is very short. We now communicate very shortly, because simply no time for. And that's why I think that programs should be, and supporting this, and aid should be looked from different perspectives in time. But now for some people, it's simply the matter of survival.
Yeah, yeah, that's of course the priority, and then then they can. But I really thank you for shining a light for us to really understand how can we help the helpers, and that's something that we at 6 Seconds Europe have been particularly interested in thinking about. And want to invite everyone to this conversation to really think about, as you said, how do we support the psychologists, those who are facing burnout? When Paulina comes back in a second, I think her internet, she's a specialist with children. So I want to know, how can we support her to support the children? Because what I'm hearing too is that, Debbie, you mentioned we kind of lose that perspective as generations get older. So we need to educate not only our helpers, but our children who are coming through not only this crisis, but growing up in this world. I have a 13 and a 9-year-old who need to learn and understand and are growing up in this time just how important, and 2 boys as well. So really, as men of the future, but also women of the future, as humanity, that we can really really strive to do that. And I see Susan, I want to share this comment. Thank you, Susan. Look for the helpers, said Mr. Rogers, who's now passed, but very much an educator, and care for the carers. Yeah, we're quoting you there, Elena. Very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And this really feels like a time in humanity to help the helpers. We've had a lot of that with COVID as well. So Paulina will jump back in hopefully in a minute. But Gwyneth, I want to ask you as well, with the time that we've got, how can we resource ourselves, do you think, when we feel like the world is falling apart? Maybe you have some thoughts, even with your coaching and side of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the work that Reconnect was developed for. It actually started for activists who were fighting against nuclear arms, and it later developed for people who are environmental activists working with climate change. But it could be applied, I think, to anyone. And so what we really, notice in the work is the power of coming together. Like, it's something that just seems so simple and obvious, but coming together, sharing feelings with each other. But I think what's special about these sorts of spaces is that you do it with a sort of promise that you're not going to be interrupted, and that the other person isn't going to, cut you off or try to fix you, try to tell you, oh, don't worry, it'll be okay. That you can really have your grief and anger and fears held and heard without having them cut across. I think having even just one other person you can do that with is really, really important. And I think that's the core essence of the work that I do. And of course, there are lots of other elements to it that are really powerful. And one, for example, can be, recognizing our connectedness and our interconnection, not just to each other as humans, but to all of life. And so, if you're able to do something like spend some time in nature, that's really important. But I want to just say, this isn't a time to think, oh, how can I power through my feelings so I can go back to business as usual, right? This is really a time to pause, as everyone said, to honor that pain, to really let it in and let it sit there. And yet at the same time, I think people are afraid that if they open up to that, they'll get stuck forever. And, I can't guarantee you won't, but at the same time, what I see through this work is, we don't get stuck there. When we let those feelings out in a safe space, we are then able to access other emotions more easily as well, like hope, joy. And and the work is really called Active Hope. So I think someone put that in the comments, empathy in action, right? It's not just sitting around hoping things will get better. It is looking for things you can do, but also not trying to rush to action immediately without processing your feelings first, because then, you might not be really doing the most helpful or effective thing either. So, one of my colleagues talks about head, heart, and hands, and people usually try to skip from the head, like the knowledge of what's happening, straight to the hands, to the action, but really giving ourselves space to go into the heart and really feel, because I think a lot of us are brokenhearted at the moment, and we need to really, give that space and acknowledge that.
Yeah. And that really ties in. Thank you, Gwyneth. That's wonderfully said. An active hope. We've got some really great phrases that are meaningful that we can really strive here. Paulina, while you're back, your connection's in and out a little bit. We've been also thinking about, we said before, how you work with children and parents, and this is where your work and really tying in with everyone. We don't want the kids of today they're in this cusp of shift, as Gwyneth just said. We're changing. There's no going back. For anyone who feels like, oh, it'll be fine in 2 years. No, we're actually evolving and moving, and we need our EQ. We need parents with EQ. We need to help the helpers, caring for the carers. What can we do, Paulina, also with the children? I have a 13 and 9-year-old. Others may be watching who have children or care for children or in the space with children. What can we do to help them in this moment of crisis?
Thank you, David, and excuse me for my bad connection.
Okay.
I'm so sorry I couldn't hear everything Elena and Debbie and Andrea said, but probably I will watch it after the live is over. And thank you for giving me the word. You know, when the war began, I was in my car with my bigger son, Krum, driving to school. I heard the news on the radio and suddenly become very quiet, just listening to the news. My son asked me at least 10 times, what's going on? What's happening? What's going on? Why are you so quiet? And I just said, it's a war. It's a war just begun in Ukraine. Do you know what is a war? Yes, we've read it in textbooks, he said. He's 10 years old. And I said, you know, your friend Irina, she is Ukrainian. Her family is there now. Her nephews, her brother, they're all there. And you know, this is very dangerous. The world is going to change a lot now because everybody suffers when there is a war. And actually, here in Bulgaria, you know, we are very close. We have a sea between us and it's not very big. Yeah. So, yeah, it's dangerous. Everybody suffers. And while waiting at a traffic light, all the thoughts running through my head just exploded and I bursted into tears with no warning of that in front of my son. And he was so scared to see me like that. Probably. He just hugged me really tight, saying, well, I'm still here. I'm here. You see me? I'm still here. And this was really powerful. Yeah. Because he is there, God. And our children are here all the time, seeing us, hearing us. Even when we cannot hide our tears and our fears, they see us. And we owe them a lot of explanations all the time. And probably before wondering how to speak to them about everything that's going on, we should first listen to them. And most of all, hear them. Because in what they say is hidden what they need to hear from us. And yeah, he was scared to see his parent that he used to see as fearless, as a hero, so frightened now. And he needed to hear from me that I'm there for him. Yeah. And yes, children here in Bulgaria or in Romania or anywhere else except Ukraine now, they may not feel the war as it's in Ukraine, as the children there feel it, but they will feel the way their parents feel. So yes, we have to talk about fear. If we are frightened, we have to talk about that. And just like that, simply, I told my sons, I have 3 boys. Now I'm scared because it's scary to know there is a war in the world. Yes, I'm scared, and just like you were when you thought there was a monster under your bed and you couldn't sleep. And this is now my monster under my bed, and I'm terrified. I will probably wake up at night in tears, just like you did. And I will need to hug you a lot, many, many times, just like you did. You remember? And because that's That's what fear do to us. That's what fear does to us, makes us worry about the ones we love.
Yeah.
And this worry is scary to me because it makes me think that there is nothing I can do to protect you. But there is actually this connectedness you were talking about before, learning and trying to teach our children that this is actually the most important now.
Yeah.
And so many topics actually you have to explain to the children. Probably they cannot understand how miserable the Ukrainian children are feeling, but what our bigger children can sense, can feel, is that we have a lot of refugees here in Bulgaria and in Romania, in Greece as well. We can initiate meetings. We should talk to our children about those refugees, that they are coming here to our country to seek for safety. And yes, to explain to our children that we are welcoming them. We are offering different kind of help, medicines, foods, clothes, but those people and their children, they really need emotional support right now. Need to feel the human side of us as people. So maybe, we can try to go with our children in these refugee centers and just talk to those people, just talk to those kids. They're kids like our kids, but they have survived a lot. And we can go there and just assure them that they are safe now and that they can count on us as friends. I'll be there. I use that phrase a lot, really, really often, and my kids know what is exactly the meaning behind I'm there for you. To be a friend when needed. We can talk with our children what it's like to be a friend, and a friend to a kid like that. And in these initiated meetings and in these conversations, I've seen how humanity is reborn. When we hear our stories from each other, we can talk to our children about that, the importance to learn, not just to say the right words, but to listen to what somebody wants to tell you, because this is really important. And it's not something extraordinary. It's absolutely normal to be there for those little big heroes, big Ukrainian heroes. And these kids will be their classmates soon. They will meet them at playgrounds, and it is absolutely important to teach our children now to accept them through understanding what they've been through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paulina. And I just want to take a moment with the five of you, and many people now on the chat are also thanking you all for your openness and your honesty and your wonderful words. And I just want to say from my side that I think also the depth of your sharing here, and this is not a live where we were hoping for answers, but I think we are seeing some threads. And if I can just paraphrase a little bit here, I see this thread of we're all suffering, and we sit with the people of Ukraine who are moving through and surviving, and at some point connecting still. This was really lovely to hear. And this key of connection, whether we're building a peace strategy like Andrea's doing, or we're connecting around bigger issues like climate and COVID and other issues like Gwyneth's doing, we're creating a safe space to hold each other. And I think that, one of the reasons when I joined 6 Seconds in 2017, I felt that sense of connection. But as carers for carers, we actually have to share and extend our message even more broadly. And it starts with the children, with all children, as Helena said, to understand, to be able to share moments, to not forget, and to see it sounds grandiose to say, but to see the humanity in all of us. But that's really what we're getting to with this. It doesn't negate all the other crises that we've experienced, but maybe we're finally shifting as a global community to say, let's all wake up. Let's all take a chance now to really connect and have a safe space to talk, and what I'm hearing, to listen, to really listen, deeply listen, to create a sense of active hope, to be constructive with our feelings, and to look out for each other. As Elena said, it could be a warm meal and somewhere to stay for the night, and it could be a broader circle and things that we can do. So with the time that we have left, as we think about here, we put together questions, and I guess, in thinking about one question here that sticks out to me, it says, the world has been changing rapidly in the last few years and months, and now the last 21 days. How can we keep progressing in your eyes? So it's sort of a way to, with our time, maybe each person can think about what is something that we can really help us keep progressing. And as Debbie said, it could be a very small thing, a small step in someone's shoes, and to see what can help us continue to grow. So if someone is listening in Australia, if they're listening in Greenland, if they're listening in America, Canada, wherever they are, because we're all coming together here and we all need to progress. So Gwyneth, would you like to start us off?
Well, I was just thinking we should also be careful of the idea of always progressing, because that might cause more crushing disappointment when we see steps back, right? And so what I would say is that we should remember that things can happen in spirals, and that things can feel like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sometimes. And yeah, sometimes having that idea that everything should be a certain way and should be linear and should progress can also harm us. So I think we really have to get better at embracing change and embracing the fact that, life was never promised to be a certain way, really. We might have been lied to by advertisers, but we were never given a promise that everything would progress in a nice, pretty linear fashion.
It's a good point, Gwyneth. And let me rephrase my question then. How do we move forward? It's not, you're right, it's not about progress, because we might move forward, move back, and take small steps. So yeah, how do we move forward? So I like that we need to acknowledge that we might actually have to go backwards to go forwards, or that we get some way and then we go back, and life is not linear. It's all over the place. Yeah. Elena, Debbie, you're ready to go? Okay.
If I can, no, Elena can go ahead, no problem.
And please, Debbie, you go first. You're unmuted.
Okay. I keep on thinking of Elena's sentence saying, right now our number one priority is surviving. And I think that sometimes progress can come from embracing the here and now, and connecting to what's going on this moment, and how I can move, let's say, forward from the current situation. So, whatever we were doing before the 24th of February, especially for Ukraine, has paused completely. So there's nothing before and there's almost nothing after, except for winning and coming out of this. So progress right now is, I think, is being able to embrace what is going on right now, and what can I do to make let's say, I'm using these words and I'm feeling they're big words for the situation, but what can I do to make, let's say, the best, if I can use that word, of this situation, in a way that understanding my feelings, helping in the best way that I can myself and the people around me, and this connectivity that we're talking about, if it's truthful and it's there and it's strong as it seems that it is, it will definitely take us forward after all this. It will be like the line of life that will allow us to continue. always makes me wonder is this, if we get sick for a few days or months, we change everything in our mind. I have to be more careful. I have to sleep more. I have to do more. And I do it for a few months. And then, like Elena said, you get used to a situation and then you forget all the promises you made yourself to yourself and you go back to how it was before. So progress can be not to forget how we're feeling now, not to forget the importance of this unity that happened overnight, not to forget that it isn't cliche to say that love and empathy and caring and compassion do save lives and nations. If we don't forget, then maybe we can go forward. And this is what we do. And this is why I love 6 Seconds. And this is why I'm here today, because we're here to remind everybody that it's not frivolous. It's not something nice to have. It's basis. It's important. It's roots. It's what saves the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. Polina, what about you? How can we move forward?
I absolutely agree with Debbie. That's why I'm nodding so much, because I'm absolutely agreeing with her. We are so vulnerable. We actually, our justice was taken away from us so easy, and the acceptance of our vulnerable human lives is something that is part of our progress now, because this knowledge of this acceptance brings us mobilization, a reconciliation, and even some kind of reincarnation, because it helps us to clear our minds from insignificant things. And this is a way of progress, to know that we probably need something. Wars do not happen just like that without a reason. And to realize that these conflicts that are happening between us people can be much more devastating than everything nature has prepared for us, even from viruses, because we were frightened of a virus lately. And to remember, as Debbie said, as a lesson, that the human can be the biggest creator of life and the biggest killer. And this is not just power, it's huge responsibility not to forget that there are always human beings in front of us. Because when we forget how important is life, how important is the connection between us, we start a war. Every time we forget that. So never forget.
Thank you. Andrea, would you share a final thought with us as well?
Yeah, what can we do? I'm always, I call myself a realistic idealist. So I am an idealist, but I think it's based on some reasoning. I was telling my daughter, I also have 2 daughters, one 10-year-old, one 3-year-old, and I was telling her, you see why I actually disarm the kids when they come into our yard? There are the boys coming with guns, and I was taking their guns away, because I think this is something that we need to do to continue, so that the concept of it gets out of their mind, of their playground. Then perhaps, I was hearing Gwyneth saying about the peace movement with the anti-nuclear movement. I'm thinking that perhaps we should go also back to that. We should go back to things as they are done in the classic way, because perhaps it was a bit left aside, and it's not quite time to be left aside for this classic nonviolence work. And then on a bit more metaphorical, but not so much, being human, because I think humanity is the biggest slap in the face of this war that has been given in the past 5 weeks now. And there is a word, Ubuntu, we use and perhaps overuse in peace building, but it means I am because you are, recognizing the very interconnectedness of all things in this world, of all actions, of all emotions. And I think, cultivating our awareness of this Ubuntu and cultivating the ideas of action from this Ubuntu.
Yeah. Thank you,
And
I
Anna.
see you, I love you, forgive me for everything, and hope to connect again to a peace action and to many more conversations.
Yeah. The conversation is only just getting started, but I'd like to give the final word to Elena to share with us your thoughts now about the next step, how we make progress or how we just move forward a little bit.
Thank you. I'm thinking a lot all these days about the real human values, and I ask myself, do we really commit to them? Not declaring, not on the paper, but do we really commit to our human values? Do we really live our human values? Because now we also see the examples of very humanic and dehumanic behavior of people. War have multi faces, and we see bad and good. But probably I'm not optimistic at the moment, but I'm still looking for the answer how it should make it genuinely and in reality to live these values, these human values.
Yeah.
And I would like also to say I'm express very deep gratitude for all of you, for those who are supporting us. We know this, we feel this, we see this from different, kind of worlds. Your prayers, your love, your empathy, you're taking care of us. Thank you very much for this. We feel this really. This is a great support.
Thank you, Elena. And we will, as a community, continue to support and continue to ask us, reach out and let's be together. I think the wonderful sharing in this last 60 minutes, 67 minutes is that really we are coming together. And as 6 Seconds, we lead that. We're a global community, and many people tonight from all parts of the world are here with us, have joined in the conversation. And many comments are being shared about just how deep and honest you've all been. So thank you so much from our perspective at 6 Seconds. We really do value your input and sharing. We'd like to continue the conversation. There are more lives of this nature coming. So for those of you who are watching on, please check in with our YouTube network, our 6seconds.org website. But of course, I think the biggest thing we can do if we take this as a takeaway, live our values, don't forget, connect, and listen would be the thing that the things that we can really take from this rich discussion tonight. So with that, I do wish you all a safe evening. Elena, stay safe and look after your family. We are sending our love and our support to you. Let's continue the chat. To those of you who are joining in the chat, thank you very much for participating tonight. Still 20 people on at the end. So 20 at the start, 20 at the end. Numbers have gone up and down, but please connect with us at 6 Seconds, and we would be happy to support you in your EQ journey, a journey that can enrich your life, as you've heard tonight, a journey in peace, a journey that will absolutely help you to deliver, to care for the carers, and to care for yourself. Good night, everyone. I wish you all a pleasant evening. Take care.